with being vulnerable or transparent with the people around you? I know I struggle with this myself, and today's guest, Julia Jones, is here to share her story of how COVID-19 has actually completely transformed the way she interacts with people in her relationships and how God has actually transformed her heart in the process. So I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
I am so excited to be back and have you on set once again. If you don't know Julia Jones, she's been on the show a few times, so if you want to look at the past episodes, feel free to.
Awesome.
Yeah, and for those that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and through a very bizarre string of moving around the country for no apparent reason, I ended up in California. I went to UC Davis, got my master's degree in economics, and through that whole time, I think I was running from a lot of bad relationship problems, family problems. I came from a broken home, and there were so many struggles with that instead, I think I didn't even at the time have the tools to cope with that, and without knowing what else to do with myself, I just ran. And so I kept moving and moving and moving, and then I found myself here in California. So here in California, I've ended up here where I met you.
Yes.
In my bridal store trying on dresses, which was so fun. And I've really developed a lot of relationships that have kept me in one place longer than I've ever lived in one place before in my life. So even the fact that I've lived here long enough to be on your show more than once is truly a miracle from God.
Hey, it's a blessing on my end, that's for sure. I had no idea that when I walked through a bridal shop, I would meet one of my best friends. No idea.
Me either.
You actually mentioned that you struggled with relationship problems and things behind the scene. Mm-hmm. Do you think that created problems of you not being able to be transparent with people?
Not being able to be transparent, but also not knowing how to elicit that from them to me. So I think it was a two-sided road. I didn't have the skills or any examples in my life of a person that could sit down and talk to me so that I felt comfortable. So in return, I didn't know how to do that for anyone else. Mm-hmm. So I think I found myself in a position where I just didn't know either side of the coin. So as soon as I lived in a place, say for 6 months, and I had enough time where I started to develop a couple of friendships, and I found myself not knowing how to handle that or what to do, I packed up and left and went somewhere else.
Wow.
So coming here was interesting because I found a church family that understood me in a different way than any place had before.
Were you a believer prior to moving?
I'm a pastor's kid. I walked across the stage with my dad when I was 3 years old as he got his master's in divinity. He's been a pastor for Methodist Church, and most recently has been the chaplain at the hospital in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So I grew up in church. So I was saved at a very young age, grew up around that. I visited the nursing homes with my dad every week and went to minister to homeless people. So I've always grown up that way. So it's never not been a part of my life. But I think questions stemming from maybe some bad doctrine and confusing situations led me to just look at organized religion and say, if that's really what God's all about, I don't want it. So in that running, I didn't know how to have human relationships, but I also found myself in a place where I didn't know how to have the God relationship either. So that's why I ran all the way to the other coast of the United States, thinking that would somehow help.
Hey, I have seen God use it all from the stories that I hear, all on every single episode of Shasta's journey.
Oh, yes.
As a pastor's kid, do you feel like people put you on a pedestal at all? And how did that affect you?
It is absolutely horrible, I will tell you that, because people look at you and they expect perfection already. You're the pastor's kid. You're supposed to know everything. You must have memorized the whole Bible. You can't ever make a mistake because you obviously know all right from wrong. So once you find yourself failing enough times in a row, you start to look at your own life and think, if I'm going to be accused of being this, I'm just going to be that.
Mm.
Where, it's like if you think I'm partying all the time, or if you criticize me for making this decision and that decision, I'm not even going to try to make the right decision anymore because I can't. You're just constantly under the microscope. Or the other side of that coin is that you're the pastor's kid, so you're expected to be more compassionate in every situation, no matter what, because your dad is. Mm. He is the pastor. He loves everybody. So when you find yourself in that moment where maybe you didn't have as much compassion as you should have, then you're criticized again. So it does make it very difficult, and I think that probably fed into a lot of the hardships I had in forming relationships with people, because no one had a realistic expectation for me.
And I think a lot of Christians can relate to this general concept, even if they're not a pastor's kid, of trying to live up to this perfection.
When I think that can sometimes go two ways, because you're either the person who's trying so hard to do the right thing, and it hurts when you get criticized because it's such a personal thing. You didn't mean to make a mistake, so you shouldn't be condemned for that. Or you're the person who's just saying you're a Christian and you're not even trying to be a Christian, and then that gives everybody else a bad name. So I think Christians get labeled either as not perfect enough or you're fake.
I would agree with that statement. I think that's 100% true. And wherever you do fall, though, something that I always try to remind myself is that life is not going to be perfect. Like, we were never promised that, and we will never be perfect. And once we can, own up to that, I think there's just so much freedom in that.
Yeah. Well, and I think you become more perfect when you stop
trying,
prejudging yourself and trying. If you just feel comfortable enough to make a good decision, you're more likely to make the good decision. Whereas if you go into it stressed already, oh, I'm going to do this wrong, then you do.
After finding your new church family who just embraced you with open arms and made you feel loved and valued and worthy, how do you think that transformed your relationships from what it was to what it is now?
I met people there who met me where I was, who took me in broken, and actually the two people I got to be closest with right off the bat was my pastor Celine and her daughter Shelly, who are both pastor's kids. So Celine's mom had been the pastor of the church first, then Celine, and then Shelly. So it was easy for me to be friends with them because they knew. It went unspoken. We didn't even have to say, oh, how do you feel when this happens? It didn't even have to be said because we already knew. And so it removed a whole layer of struggle in forming the relationship to begin with, and they didn't place that prejudgment or unrealistic expectation on me. They were willing just to take me in as the broken person that I was at that point and be my friend anyway.
I love that. You said so many powerful things just now. Meeting people where they're at is huge. Yeah. I think we all really need to work on that. And the other thing you also mentioned is how they could relate to your story. And that's why I think it's so important for people to share their story, because you have no idea who's going to hear that and is going to be taught, healed, or inspired.
Right.
And what trials and tribulations have you personally been through that you feel has shaped and molded you into the person that you are today?
Oh my gosh, we need a longer show.
See, that's why she keeps coming back.
That's why I keep coming back. No, I think I went through divorce myself, and that was really hard because that judged feeling of being the pastor's kid, being divorced just shook my world, because I never thought I would be that person. Of all the bad decisions I've ever made, a lot of them were like, well, we might have seen that coming. But that particular situation made me so ashamed of myself, because I just saw myself as a complete failure. Like, the one thing that's the most important thing, that started with Adam and Eve, that's portrayed through the entire Bible, and I wrecked it, and I failed, and I lost, and that was pretty much the rock bottom for me. So I think at that point, I really did give up thinking that I would ever have any relationships in my life, whether it be friendship, with family, with a marriage, with anything. And it was right after that divorce that I found myself being led to that church. And that those people took me and said, there's no judgment here. You're not a failure. It just is a thing that happened. But those trials then are things that turn around and kind of kick you in the pants and make you make a bigger change. If that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have been so motivated to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's led you to an amazing family that you have now. How much time passed in between you getting divorced and you finding your husband now?
Almost 7 years. So by the time we met, got engaged and got married, we were 36, almost 37. I wasn't supposed to be able to have children. I had been told my whole life that it wasn't possible for me to have children. So we got married New Year's Eve 2010, and the first week of February, I found out I was pregnant. Had my son Eli when I was 37.
And the doctors told you couldn't have one.
Couldn't have children.
Did you stay faithful in your mindset that you could, or did you kind of give up on that dream as well?
Completely. I never even let it be a dream.
Oh.
I just said, I'm a person who's never going to have children. And I've accepted that from being a teenager. So when my husband and I got engaged, I had told him, we can't have children. We're already almost 37. So maybe we'll just be us, and that's okay. Everybody doesn't have to have kids to make the world go round. Mm-hmm. Or maybe in a few years we decide to adopt, and then that might be fun too. My mom's adopted, so we could kind of carry on that tradition. So we just kind of went into it like we don't even have to think about that because it's not real.
Got it.
And then immediately it was.
What were you thinking?
I was petrified. I felt like I was getting ready to tattletale on myself to my parents for like some horrible thing where trying to figure out, because I couldn't wrap my own mind around the fact,
how is this happening?
How is this even real? And so here I'm thinking, this poor man that I've been married to for 30 days, who I told this definitely would not happen. And here we are, So I actually was completely out of my mind with stress over how to tell him. So I finally choked the words out, I'm pregnant. And he said, oh, that's great. So now I'm having a panic attack. What do you mean that's great? He didn't even flinch. So, and now we have Eli.
Aw. And he's adorable, by the way.
And he loves you.
Aw, I love him too. If you want to see what Eli looks like, he's on a previous episode of Shasta's Journey, so just kind of click through YouTube and you'll find him.
He's the one with white hair.
Yeah. You actually started a new ministry.
Yes.
I want to get into that a little bit because I don't think we've talked about it in previous shows. So this is like super important. It's called Together Joyful.
Yes.
Tell us about it. How did you come up with the idea?
So God has been formulating this in my brain for a few years. And you actually have been a part of that, me getting over my fear of filming YouTube videos, which is a huge part of actually starting this brand. So a few things happened right in a row, beginning the 1st of January, that brought me to actually name this and purchase the URL from GoDaddy and like make a video.
I saw that's like commitment. Like once you buy the domain, it's like
real
time.
So right at the end of the year, I had this customer of mine who I did her wedding like 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and she's had 2 babies since, and came in to get balloons for a gender reveal, which I did make a video about that you can check out on my YouTube channel. That's probably awesome. Tomorrow. But she came in and we randomly were talking about the fact that she is a health and wellness coach and she's a Christian, so she completely comes at it from a Christian point of view, and she's also a nurse. So she has health background but also fitness and nutrition and all of this. And she's been doing this for a few years, and we're friends on Facebook, and somehow I didn't even see that.
Wasn't time. And
here she walks through the door, and God just, and okay, here it is. What am I doing? So I didn't have enough money to sign up with her, and that made me feel a little sick to my stomach, which is how I knew it was the right thing to do. So I came up with enough cash, signed up, and she's been coaching me. So Since January, I've lost 35 pounds. But she also helped me see that where I was in my life, I was completely depleted on every front. So nutritionally depleted. I wasn't exercising. I was isolating myself from people. You know, I've had people like you come into my life, and then when you go back out, I have to remind myself that doesn't mean I have to be isolated. I could have still been talking to you every day that whole time, and I just didn't. So
you're preaching to the choir.
Right. Yes. And so through that time, I've started to follow her page and read her inspiration and let her coach me. Her name's Jessica Lanier. She's fantastic. So I also signed up with her to myself learn how to be a coach. So I'm learning how to do this for other people. Then I got inspired to finally do my video. I started to film a video, and then the COVID thing happened. Oh. So for someone like me, COVID, stay-at-home, shutdown is the most comfortable, fantastic place to be. Most people can't relate to that, but if you're a person who avoids relationships and you're told you can't leave your house, fantastic. It's so great.
I really wish I experienced that.
Well, we all experienced it in different ways, but it was like the world was giving me permission to be my old self.
Huh.
But in the face of that, God was challenging me to become someone new and break out of that.
That's powerful.
So it was literally like, I heard a reporter on the news one morning say, right into the microphone, looking right out, she said, "Our only hope is to isolate ourselves. That's the only way we'll be saved." And it hit me like a ton of bricks that that's exactly the opposite of what God is telling us through all of Scripture. It's the opposite. Like, you're not saved on a lonely island all by yourself with no help from anybody. It's completely not scriptural. So that morning, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, the world is challenging me to stay the same. And God is saying, in the midst of this, you have to seek it out. So it's like all of a sudden during this time, all these things I've been afraid of, and you know, you've tried to film a YouTube video with me for a whole year.
So many times.
And I can't even get one word out. And all of a sudden, God's saying, you got to get a tripod and sit at your desk and press play and record a video. And it doesn't have to be good. And
progress.
Nobody even has to watch it, but you just have to do it. And then other friends have come into my life during this time who I know were meant for me. I just keep getting, for such a time as this, that everything I've learned over the past few years was preparing me for a time. It's almost like mama bird pushing the baby bird out of the nest, saying, okay, I've taught you. You have all these scriptures. You have all these people in your life who have taught you how to have a relationship, and now you have to do it. And so it's been uncomfortable and awesome all at the same time.
That's COVID for you.
Yes.
That's how it's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Was there any difficulties for you during COVID? I mean, I know you said that it was in your comfort zone for the most part, but
the downside
was your faith
to it
challenged at all?
I don't know that it was so much my faith, but like you, even though I avoid relationships, I'm also super active, always busy, work, doing something all the time. You know, I don't have free time on my hands.
No.
I don't like having free time on my hands. I find it to be bad.
I do too.
Just because I get into trouble. But the big thing for me is that I've faced so many challenges in my business over the past years, where I've had some, financial hardships that I'm still trying to overcome. And all of a sudden, for 5 weeks, I couldn't open the door of my store. And not only that, so it's a bridal store, formal wear, men's suits, and balloons for parties, which all requires a large gathering. So in March, proms got canceled, graduation got canceled, spring weddings canceled, summer weddings canceled. So within 3 days, I had to refund $5,000 in tuxedo rentals that were no longer going to happen because prom, graduation, and weddings were canceled. So I had to let all this money go and then lock the door and know that for some amount of time I would have no income.
Wow.
But I think that this was also another place where God was pushing the baby bird out of the nest, where he wanted to prove to me that if I wasn't working 6 days a week and I wasn't busy, go, I don't have time for anything else in my life, if I was forced to be still, he would provide what I needed. And he did. And it's fine. And I was able to turn my open sign again a couple of weeks ago and unlock my door. And even though weddings aren't rescheduled yet, I've been getting customers who are eloping or who have to do a drive-by graduation, so they ordered balloons to tie to their car. So it's been a time where I had to, on more than one level, learn that the way I fix things isn't the way he intends me to fix things, so I'm learning to do it his way.
Isn't it incredible what you learn when the whole world shuts down?
It is. It really is.
I would have never guessed that we would be in that predicament whatsoever.
No.
How do you think you're going to take the mindset that you learned during COVID of being able to fully trust God in that relationship that you have, even though the whole world has pretty much opened back up?
Right. You know, it actually has shown me things. So God has been setting me, again, for such a time as this, I keep getting that over and over because for the past 5 years, he's been setting me up for this year without me knowing. And I would never, 4 years ago, who would have thought the world was going to close? I mean, it wasn't even a reality or a thought in the back of your mind.
I don't think anybody was expecting or prepared
or even think that would ever be possible. Well, for the past 5 years, instead of ordering wedding dresses and doing it the traditional way where you have 50 samples in your store, you try that on and then you order a new one for the customer. So you have the same 50 dresses all the time. I was led to not do it that way. So over time, I've contacted stores and made some relationships where this is a high-end store that doesn't want a clearance rack in their store. So when those samples get discontinued, they don't want them there anymore. So I've made these relationships over the past years where I've been able to take in inventory, to have off-the-rack inventory at pennies on the dollar and make payments, even monthly payments towards paying it off.
Wow.
So that I now have 600 dresses in stock.
And you don't have to get them shipped in.
I don't have to get them shipped in. I'm not relying on China to be open. Manufacturing can come to a complete stop and it doesn't affect me whatsoever.
It took 3-4 months.
Right. Yeah. I mean, every place is suffering from that. But I got set up for this where people said to me, you have too much inventory in this store. You need to get rid of stuff. You've got stuff that seems outdated and no one's going to want this. But I just didn't feel like what they were saying was true. It was like God was telling me, I'm giving you this for a reason. And so I've just held on to that over these years, where now all of a sudden, satin's coming back into style, and guess what I have? 500 satin dresses. And you have to buy off the rack. If you're getting married before December 31st of this year, you can't order. So you have to buy off the rack. And I'm the only store within probably an hour's drive that has that kind of inventory. So even people from out of my community are going to have to come shop with me once they can start scheduling their weddings again, because nobody else is set up for that.
It's so mind-blowing how everything works out. And I love that you're able to see just the light in all the darkness. I think that's something that we can all relate to and also learn from.
And I think, too, to learn that if you really trust what God says, you're going to come out of this better than you went into it. And that's his promise to us, that we're going to be blessed, and that if we seek, we'll find him. And if you knock, he's going to open the door. So if we're really doing those things, we all came into COVID kind of maybe a little more privileged than we deserve to be. But if we've believed what God's been telling us this whole time, we're going to come out of it even better. And so I just hold on to that hope that where other people from here to the end of the year may have still a terrible time because the economy is bad, I might have the best year I've had in 7 years because I've somewhat listened. I'm not great at listening, but I'm a little bit good, and I've done that.
I love that. And more about the Together Joyful. How did you come up with the name?
So Together Joyful was me confessing out loud through a URL and a YouTube channel and a Facebook page and an Instagram page that I'm not going to find the joy of the Lord alone. I'm only going to find the joy of the Lord together.
In the relationships.
In the relationships. And that's me taking that step to develop relationships. So some of my videos and content are going to be factual, like maybe inspirational scriptures, relationships that I'm developing. This crazy new friend of mine, Anissa, who might be on a future episode of Shasta's Journey, and relationships with family, where I'm confessing and just telling little inspirational things about new relationships that I'm forming. But I'm also going to film shows, and you're going to love this, called My Honest Unashamed Life, where I'm going to be okay with the fact that I'm filming a video with a phone that's 4 years old on a rickety tripod that my son kind of broke one of the legs on, and there's a pile of laundry behind me that you can see in the video with my mustard yellow countertops. And I'm cool with that because I've suddenly realized that using all those things as an excuse, I can't invite you over to visit with me. I can't film a YouTube video because my house is a mess and my counters are ugly and my tripod's broken and my phone is old, and
Wow.
It's all excuses.
Wow.
I could have been doing these things this whole time, and I let that be an excuse. So Together Joyful is me confessing out loud that I'm going to be together, and I'm going to become joyful, and I'm not going to use excuses to get out of that anymore.
You're completely unashamed, and there's just so much freedom in that. I love this so much. If you're watching this episode, please go check out togetherjoyful.com. Just build up Julia for working up the courage to finally buy the domain and get started. And I hope you were inspired by her story of how she was able to learn from COVID. And I hope that you can look back on your experiences of what you have gone through over the last few months of being stuck in your house, and what you have gathered from that experience, and hopefully come out of it being even a better person and knowing yourself more than you ever have before. I hope you guys have a blessed day. Go to shastasjourney.com to share your testimony or to get prayer requests or anything like that. And I look forward to the next episode.